Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with Virtual Tasting Society. I am Vadim Perlovsky, and today we are excited to welcome a brand that is loved by many and it will be tasted by everyone here today. Elijah Craig, the father of bourbon, I believe is their slogan. Joining us to tell us all about Elijah Craig is Jack Choate.
There you go. You got
All
it.
right.
Jack Choate. That's right.
Jack Choate. We're welcoming him back. He was here last year and he's back now and gonna do a deep. Last year we did an introduction to Heaven Hill in general, and congratulations on your new purchase, acquiring a few new brands as of this week. That's exciting news.
Yeah.
And I believe, Jack, you represent the whole portfolio, right?
I represent the Heaven Hill Distillery, and now as of this week, I have to clarify that I represent the Heaven Hill Distillery portfolio. So our whiskeys that we make from Heaven Hill brands. What my job will be in regards to Widow Jane and Few moving forward, you'll know when I know. It's really new to all of us. I excited what they're doing up in New York and what Paul's doing in Illinois and Evanston is amazing. I've known Paul for a little while as his Christian. So yeah, we're excited. I mean, there's amazing brands there outside of the whiskey world that I can't wait to dig into. I mean, sounds like could be a trip to Oaxaca, the highlands of Jalisco in my future, possibly France. We'll see. Philadelphia with Blue Coat Gin.
We're huge fans of the whole Samson Surrey portfolio. We've tasted most of their brands. We've had Bren on here. We've had Few. We've had Widow Jane. So they're a fantastic portfolio of really awesome brands. So congratulations. That's going to be a really nice addition to Heaven Hill.
Cool. Well, I'll email you guys when I have questions. It's fun to learn about new stuff, and I'm excited to really dig into it. But and as you guys know, I probably prefaced this the last time. I think it's been about a year since we were all together. I'm pretty informal. I'll answer any question that I know the answer to. So don't be afraid. I'm really glad that when I pushed on making this a personal in-person appearance, that Vadim pushed back because I have COVID. So I am not going to, I was thinking about how to do this. I'm feeling fine now. I've had it for about a week now. And I'm sure I'm not the only one on here that has experienced it lately. But I'm not going to dive too deep into the brand stories. You pretty much hit the brand story on the head, Vadim, when you introduced Elijah Craig. We call him the father of bourbon. I'm going to allow us to drink, enjoy these whiskeys. I want you guys to ask me anything you want. Share your tasting notes. Like I said, I have COVID. My tasting notes are probably going to be pretty few and far between. Today I had whiskey for the first time last night. I was like, oh yeah, that's sweet, but that's about all I get. So obviously we'll run through these. We'll talk about what's going on with all of them, mash bills, etc. But now that I am in LA, hopefully we can do these more frequently, even if it's a more informal happy hour at accounts around the greater Los Angeles area land. So the last part about that is, if Clay isn't the only one that's already thirsty, please feel free to dive into your samples while I'm talking, while the rest of the group is talking. The only thing that I will ask is, don't finish it until we're try to leave yourself a drop of each one until we get to the end, because I do like to guide through the tasting and have people taste, side by side, especially in this, when 5 of the 6 are all the same mash bill, all under the same brand, which gives them inherently a lot of similarities, which we want. So to kick off real quick, just a quick reminder, Heaven Hill Distillery. We are part of what is now known as Heaven Hill Brands. We are celebrating our 86th year currently of being around. We are the largest family-owned and family operated distilled spirits company in the United States. We have something in every category of distilled spirits. We have always made American whiskey from go. That has been the heart and soul of who we are and what we do, and continues to be to this day, under the guise of keeping alive, one, making great spirit, first off, and two, as time has progressed, keeping alive the history and heritage of American whiskey. We started in 1935, a joint venture between the five Shapiro brothers and Harry and Joe Beam. Harry and Joe Beam had the know-how, but they had no cash. The Shapiro brothers had a little bit of cash, owning a chain of, for lack of a better term, department stores throughout Kentucky. Over the course of time, very quickly actually, Heaven Hill became family owned by the Shapiros entirely, really before 1940. But from the beginning until 2017, a Beam family member was either our master distiller or having a very significant part of our distilling operation. I say that because, as most of you know, Parker Beam was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease the last 5 years of his life, and the last 2 or 3 years of that, he was not present every day. I'm sure he wanted to be present every day, but he was unable to. Connor O'Driscoll is now our master distiller, our 8th master distiller at Heaven Hill. We hold a quarter of the world's bourbon supply at Heaven Hill, over 1.9 million barrels currently resting amongst 60 or so warehouses. I say 60 or so because I don't get the email every time one of our older rick houses is decommissioned and one of our new ones has been put up. We've put up about 14 in the last 5 years at our Cox's Creek location, each of those holding anywhere between 55 to 60,000 barrels apiece. So those 1.9 million barrels, 60 plus warehouses, are between 5 different locations out in Nelson and Shelby County, and then one across the street from our Bernheim distillery in the Shively area, or the California neighborhood of downtown Louisville. Our original distillery was in Bardstown. It burnt down November 7th, 1996. We acquired the old Bernheim plant that was owned by that time by United Distillers. You now know them by their current name of Diageo. They decided that American whiskey was dead in 1999 and decided to sell all of their stocks and their distillery and one of their brands called Old Fitzgerald to us. I bet they wish they had a crystal ball. So our distillery is downtown Louisville. Majority of our aging is about 50 miles away. In Bardstown, Connor is there every day. He has increased our capacity to 1,500 barrels of production of American whiskey a day. I say American whiskey because we are not making bourbon every day. We are making bourbon about 27 to 28 days out of every month. We are the only American whiskey distillery that makes every single style of American whiskey as defined by the U.S. standards of identity. So those other 3-4 days of the week, 3-4 days of the month, excuse me, we're making either rye whiskey, corn whiskey, appreciate the mellow corn shout out, Clay, and sometimes malt whiskey. We haven't made malt whiskey in a number of years, but we can fill in with that. So the 2 types of bourbon, wheat whiskey, corn whiskey, and malt whiskey is what we have going on. So with that, I'm going to jump into Elijah Craig. Show of hands real quick. Is this anyone's first time having any of the Elijah Craigs? Like you've never had anything with an Elijah Craig label on it in your life? Everyone's no, I see no head nods. Okay, cool. So we're going to be tasting the 494 proofs. We're going to taste the namesake Elijah Craig small batch in 94 proof, an 8 to 12-year-old small batch mingle. We're going to be tasting a single barrel pick. Christian, when we get to that one, I'm going to let you jump in and give the details on that, since I just got that today. We're going to be tasting the Elijah Craig Rye, which is a fairly new entrant into the Elijah Craig brand, but it did win one of Whiskey Advocate's World Whiskey's top 10 whiskeys of the year last year. Not often seen on shelves. Next would be the Elijah Craig Toasted Barrel. Also, those are the 4 at 94 proof. And then are we only doing 5 or are we doing 6? I have 6 poured.
We're doing
What
6.
did I miss? What did I miss? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so the 4th one, remember while I'm presenting and I forget things, COVID brain. The 4th one is the Elijah Craig Toasted Barrel. 5th, we're going to go real big, take a big leap and go to the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, the C921. And then finally, we're going to maybe mellow out our palates a little bit. This is where we probably were going to go back and taste one of the 94 proofs before we then end everything with the Elijah Craig 18-year-old single barrel. Sound good?
Great.
Cool. So as Vadim said, Elijah Craig is the father of bourbon. It's the moniker that he was given in a news article that came out in around the 1870s. What is now the Louisville Courier-Journal wrote a story about Elijah Craig, who was a Baptist preacher. He was actually responsible for the first college in what is now the state of Kentucky. When he was alive, it was still part of the Commonwealth of Virginia. But they wrote this story that he was not only doing those things, but distilling. And he was the first to actually use a charred barrel to age his whiskey in. And he wasn't just, it didn't just happen to be, oh, you know what, it's a sunny day, it's really hot, I'm going to put my whiskey in a charred barrel. He was using the barrel to ship it. The majority of the whiskey that he was making was going on what we call a Kentucky boat or a flatboat. Imagine about 10 or 12 logs stuck together. You can imagine Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn going down the Kentucky River or the Mississippi River on one of those boats. That's exactly the way that Elijah Craig was getting his barrels from what is now Kentucky to the port of New Orleans. And it was sitting for about 9 months. So these were our first aging, or our first warehouses, our first rick houses. These Kentucky boats go, in the case of Elijah Craig, going down the Elkhorn Creek to the Kentucky River, to the Ohio River, up to St. Louis, where it hooked a left on the Mississippi River down to New Orleans. All in all, the order that we're going in, John, is the order that I just said. We may, depending on how everyone's feeling, we may go to the single barrel before we get to the barrel proof. But we'll, right now, the 94 proof small batch, the 94 proof single barrel, the rye, toasted barrel, barrel proof, then the 18-year-old single barrel. We want to go ahead and give a cheers with the 94 proof while I'm telling the Reverend Elijah Craig story. Thank you, John and Matthew, for calling that to our attention. Ooh, I can smell it, and hopefully I can taste it. So once the whiskey got to New Orleans after that 9-month trip, instead of whiskey looking like this in a glass, clear or water white, folks in New Orleans started seeing whiskey that maybe looked a little bit like the color of this, or like what I like to say, iced tea that's been sitting in the hot Florida sun in your car, or the hot Los Angeles sun in your car all afternoon, that sort of shade. And they liked this new whiskey, but they didn't really know what to call it. They didn't know how to order it. So what they did was they looked on the barrel, and what they saw emblazoned on the barrel was, this was, I haven't done this in a few months, so bear with me 1 second. Emblazoned on it was a port of embarkation, which was the state of Kentucky, the county of Bourbon, and the contents inside were whiskey. So they started asking for this new Kentucky bourbon whiskey. And this is the story that newspaper article told in the 1870s about Elijah Craig's whiskey. It was then retold by the group that is now DISCUS, or DISC, the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, which is the main lobbying organization for our industry. This is a story that they were using in their main PR efforts when they were trying to get bourbon to become America's native spirit in the 60s. And this was the story that Max Shapira wanted to use and referenced when we were creating the Elijah Craig brand, the Elijah Craig small batch brand in the mid 80s in Kentucky. It did have a 12-year-old age statement on it. I don't have one of those bottles. I do have one of these bottles. This is what Elijah Craig 12 small batch most recently looked like before the age statement was removed and the bottle shapes changed. Elijah Craig Small Batch, when it first was on the shelves in 1986, was $8.99. That was MSRP. Can you imagine how wonderful that would be right now? Funny thing is, no one bought it. Even in 2010, Elijah Craig, with a 12-year-old age statement right smack dab on the front of the label, was only a 10,000 case a year brand. That's less than any of those two whiskeys from any of those whiskey labels from Few or from Widow Jane that we were talking about as a point of reference. So now it's a 400,000 case a year brand, which is fantastic. And I know somebody's going to ask me why we took the 12-year-old age statement off of it. So I'll just go ahead and tell you, it was a business decision. We wanted to make a whiskey that was readily available, that retained a lot of those same flavor profiles of that 12-year-old age stated bottle, but we wanted it to be readily available and available daily, and we didn't want to raise the price. You guys are probably pretty familiar with our portfolio. We've got, Parker's Heritage. We've got the Bottled and Bond Decanter series from Old Fitzgerald. We've got Elijah Craig 18. We used to have Elijah Craig 23. We've had Heaven Hill 27. We're about to bring back some other new Heaven Hill age-stated brands. We have a lot of allocated stuff, but who on this call likes to hear the word allocated? Who likes to go in the liquor store and find nothing available? I can tell you I don't. Not one bit. I mean, the thing that we like to talk about at Heaven Hill when we're giving presentations to groups like y'all is, if I go into a liquor store with $100 bill, I'd rather come out with my arms full of bottles than one and go take a picture of it in between my knees in my car, right? The same way that Connor likes to say that he makes it for y'all to drink it, I like to get bottles that I can drink, right? Yeah, allocated is great if you can get one. So that's the fork in the road that we came to in 2015 with the Elijah Craig Small Batch. And in 2014, 2015, the Elijah Craig with the 12 on the front of the label was my favorite one to drink. And in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, now 22, this bottle right here, the Elijah Craig Small Batch 94 proof minus the age statement, is my favorite bottle to drink. It is my daily bourbon. 9.5 days out of 10, I am having that either neat, I'm making having it on the rocks, I'm making an old fashioned with it, or I'm making a Boulevardier. I was actually running around my house trying to make a Boulevardier before I jumped on, but I was like, I got too much going on. I got to pour 6 samples. It's 6:55. I'll have one when we get off the call as my reward. It works perfectly for every drinking occasion. The mouthfeel of it, the flavor, the tasting notes of it are what I absolutely love. You're getting those vanillas, those caramels, you're getting coconut, you're getting those big, robust, sweet notes that you expect from a bourbon, right? I'm never someone that's going to sit here and start naming down every spice on the spice rack or every vegetable in the vegetable aisle. Half the time I can't remember the word marzipan. Anyways, I do get marzipan some of the time. You do get some of those almond mates. Who hacked my ... We're doing the Elijah Craig 94, then we're doing the single barrel 94, then the rye 94, then the toasted barrel, the barrel proof, and then the 18-year-old single barrel 90 proof. Sorry, it probably would be helpful if someone still does type that in for them. If you guys haven't already tasted this, go ahead and taste it. Feel free to chime in, throw into the chat what you guys get. Feel free to tell me if you hate it, you love it. If this is your daily drink, I'd love to hear anyone and everyone's feedback.
Yeah, I got to say it's not my daily drinker anymore, mostly because I don't really have a daily drinker because I just have a bunch of bottles, so I go back and forth. But for a long time, you get the big guy at Costco for like $35 or $40 or whatever it was, and it was just like I always had that because of what you're saying. It just,
Yeah.
it's kind of one of those, it gives you exactly what you want for drinking bourbon, and you could drink it sort of, there's certain things that you can't drink in certain weather or certain moods or sort of whatever. And I agree. The small batch, you can just sort of, whatever the time, whatever the occasion, it's there for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can show you guys my shelf. So, and this is not me showing off, but I mean, I hear you and I agree with you, and that's my point. I mean, I've got all these to choose from, and I can't remember who it was, but somebody says allocated is great if you can get it. Well, I have it, and I consistently go back to this bottle. Consistently, I know what I'm getting every time, and it really pays homage. The reason that I do that, action of doing that, pays homage to, Tawny, Mike, and Chris, our QC team, our sensory team, or as I call them, their master tasters. Tawny, Goatee, Mike Sani, and Chris Briney collectively have close to 150 years of service at Heaven Hill. Tawny has been putting together our batches for bottling since before I was alive, and I'm almost 43 years old. Tawny's been working underneath him for 32 years. She tastes anywhere between 150 to 200 different spirits a day before lunch. She knows what a barrel sample is going to be when it's this far from her nose. Like, I can't remember the anteater character on the Muppets. Her nose works like that, right? It's really amazing. And the reason I tell you that is a segue into what a small batch is, right? And you see small batch, you see single barrel, all of what we're tasting tonight. These are two words that are not in that document that I talked about a little bit earlier, the U.S. Standards of Identity. This is the document that Congress wrote coming out of the repeal of Prohibition that defines what all spirits, alcoholic beverages, et cetera, how they must be made, produced, and marketed to the general public, whether they're made in America or they're made outside our shores and they're coming in, they have to be made under these specifications. You will not see the term small batch or single barrel anywhere in those documentations. These are new terms. And of course, now in 2022, they're everywhere, right? I think you can get like small batch deodorant now. I mean, everything is small batch and single barrel. And single barrel is pretty self-explanatory, right? Single barrel. You take one barrel, you dump it, you bottle it, you move on to the next. This is our Evan Williams single barrel. We write the number, the barrel number, the day it was bottled on the back. Voila, it's beautiful. Same with our Elijah Craig 18 single barrels. We'll get to that one towards the end, obviously. Small batch is a little bit different. Small batch differs from distillery to distillery. And each one of these, you as a consumer should be asking, what is single barrel to you? Yes, it's self-explanatory, but it's not legally defined. And for those of us who've been drinking for a number of years, we're probably pretty familiar with some of the wool that has been pulled over the regular drinker's eyes by different distilleries, right? If you're going to say you're a product of a state, you have to be made in that state. And there are products that have tried to do that before that have swindled you. That's not to say that I'm aware of single barrel that aren't single barrels, but it's just something to put in your mind and ask the question, right? If you have a single barrel and information isn't on there, it's interesting. These are just crazy things that I think about. Like I said, I'm not aware of anyone that fibs on the single barrel. It's just not legally defined. So small batch at Heaven Hill is 150 to 300 barrels at a time. This Elijah Craig small batch, and each of these Elijah Craig small batches that we're having, and that's all 4 of the 6 whiskeys that we're tasting tonight, 150 to 300 barrels or less. In the case of this first one that we're having, you're going to have about 50% 8, 9, and 10-year-old whiskey and 50% 11 and 12-year-old whiskey. So it's giving you, it's pretty spot on to an 11-year-old age profile is what Tawny and Mike tell us. Just going to read in some of the comments while you guys are tasting and marinating on the knowledge that I'm dropping.
Why go for an 11-year-old taste when it used to be a 12-year? I mean, I understand why you don't do 12-year anymore, but why not try to mimic that flavor profile?
I mean, I think what they did was they, and this is the way that really we're going for any flavor profile, is what is the flavor profile that the tasting team deems to be the best. And this was the flavor profile that the tasting team deemed to be the best. And the way that we do that is through it's called a triangle process. And what we do is, it's, can't see my setup behind me, but we basically get two white sheets of paper next to each other, you know, long ways parallel, and you do one, 2, 3 samples, and then in the other one you do 1, 2, 3, and all 6 samples total are blind. You don't know what they are, but you know that on this sheet 2 are the same and 1 is different, and you know on this sheet 2 are the same and 1 is different. And the goal of that type of test is to not figure out which one is different. If you can say that sample A, that sample B, that sample B, that sample B, that sample A, that sample A, it's wrong, and it's not gonna pass the test. So everything is done blind until we determine the flavor profile that we like. I don't think anyone, you know, I can't say it for certain because I wasn't in the room, but I would doubt anyone said, hey, let's go try and find something that tastes exactly like it. I'm sure what they did was they put the control for the old 12-year age statement in there with the one that was deemed the best, and then it passed the test along with it. So yeah, it is really cool, Clay. The first time that I did it, January or February of 2018, we did it. It ended up being Evan Williams bottled and bond versus Old Fitzgerald bottled and bond. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Bernie Lovers. He's our global whiskey ambassador and my boss. He and I both were pretty founded. So, but it was a little intense. We were in the lab for the first time. We're learning this new thing. We're like, oh my God, this is so cool. We get it right. But then we found out we didn't want to get it right. We both were able to pull that one of the samples was Evan Williams bottled and bond, which we were both very proud of, because that's a special favorite for it as well. So if you have a little bit of your Elijah Craig small batch, put that in your left hand and grab that single barrel sample that you have. Christian, I know I don't see you on your screen, but you may be within shouting distance. If you can give everyone the particulars on the barrel. If not, I'll see if I can find it.
I've just been trying to find some decent lighting as you were talking. I was in the shadows earlier. Okay, so the single barrel that we have is a single barrel pick. I'm holding the bottle up and you can't see it. It's a single barrel pick that I did with an account called the San Ysidro Ranch. And what we did was put 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 year samples out, and we all blind tasted them and decided which one we liked the best. And we actually picked the youngest. We picked the 8 year. So it's always really cool to see when people pick an 8 year blind, even when there's older expressions, because you take out that older is better kind of thought process. So that's really cool. Rickhouse G is our main campus. The main campus is what Jack was talking about earlier. When we had that fire back in 1999, it was the main campus that had that huge fire. And Jack, I don't know how many rickhouses sit there, but I did see a factoid that said there's about 500,000 barrels sitting in all those rickhouses just in our main campus area.
Yeah, that campus still has the most of all 5 of the campuses. So if any of you are traveling, if anybody's going back to the Bourbon Trail and you go to the new Heaven Hill Bourbon Heritage Center, Heaven Hill Bourbon Experience in Bardstown, Kentucky, you'll be pretty much right across the street from Rickhouse G, where this barrel was pulled from. I've yet to go. I'm really excited. We're doing some really fun new tours. We just went under like a over $100 million renovation of it, which is pretty significant. So thank you for that information, Christian. So
one last tidbit of information.
Yep.
You can see my background is a rick house. This was taking on the 7th floor of the rick house because there's 7 floors in our rick houses, and this was pulled from the 6th floor. So the barrel sample that we have is not only an 8-year expression coming from the main campus, but it's also pulled from the 6th floor.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's where I was going with it. So when you talk about the small batch, and I just tasted the two again next to each other, and I saw someone's less spice smells sweeter. Yeah, that sweetness just like zoned right in and just shot right up both my nostrils. It's pretty awesome. And I was expecting that same thing on the taste and the finish. And I think I actually prefer the nose on the single barrel over the small batch, but I prefer the small batch in the drinking process. Hi, Red.
Hi.
Oh, you're gonna come in? My 3-year-old Red just decided to come in. So go ahead and give those a taste side by side to yourself if you haven't, and see what you think. Christian, do you know what was the San Ysidro Ranch when they were picking this? Are they cocktailers up there, or are they neat sippers up there? A little bit of both. What were they trying to
Mainly
fit
neat
with
sippers, because it's a lot of the old school money that's in Montecito. So they drink a lot of scotch. They're trying to turn the corner and get the older crowd into the bourbons while satisfying the younger crowd that are asking for the really exclusive bourbons. And they wanted a really great non-polarizing whiskey, something that really was like bourbon across the board. And it's not too tannic or it's not too sweet. They wanted something that had a real great balance to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see the comments over there. I bet this goes really nice on the rocks, and someone confirming that indeed it does. There you go. Yeah, I mean, I think they nailed it for what they're looking for. I mean, I think if that's your clientele, that nose is mind blowing. And so when you're talking about small batch and you're talking about those different age barrels, the other part of that is where we're pulling those barrels from in the rick house. As Christian said, are all 7 stories high. And you can see over Christian's right shoulder there, each floor is 3 barrels high. So a rick house is 21 barrels tall, or seven floors at 3 barrels high a piece. So that's the other element that goes into when you're pulling a small batch. Are you pulling all the barrels from the 6th floor? No. Are you pulling them all from the 7th floor? No. The 1st floor? No. When you're doing a small batch, generally speaking, you're picking them from the center cut. So you're pretty much doing like the middle of the 3rd floor to the upwards, right? When we're talking about barrels being pulled from the 7th floor, that's generally where we're going to pull stuff like Evan Williams, Rittenhouse, Mellow Corn, things that are only aging for the minimum time frame needed, so that we don't have to put an age statement on the whiskey, because as we all learned in 3rd grade science class, heat rises, right? So the rick houses are going to change temperature about 15 degrees per floor in the summertime, and in the wintertime. None of our warehouses are temperature controlled. The only temperature control we have is allowed by Mother Nature, and that's opening windows. You can see some light shining in Christian's background. We open those windows on April 1st, and we close those windows on October 1st. So that's about 400 windows per building. So it takes about a day to go around and open and close all the windows in the warehouse. And for those of you that have been to Kentucky in the summer, it can get upwards of 100, 115 degrees. And right now, when they're getting ice storms, I've come out of a bar in January in Kentucky, and it's been -18 at 2 o'clock in the morning. So really significant temperature swings. We don't do any sort of barrel cycling or anything like that. The only time we take a barrel out of its rick once it's there is to either dump it to bottle it or to repair it. And if we take it down to repair it, we put it right back to where it was. The only of the main heritage distilleries that I'm aware of that still does any sort of cycling is Maker's Mark. They put their barrels in on the top floor the first 3 years, and then they move them around for their last 3 years of aging. Cool. I was trying to follow up comments at the same time to see if there are any questions. Vadim, if there are any questions, or Christian, if you guys see any questions in the comments that I missed, just feel free to stop me and holler.
No, but I'm actually seeing a few comments that people, don't like the single barrel as much as they like the small batch. And Vadim, I gave him a few samples to taste through at one point, and he kind of had the same feeling. Like the single barrels weren't hitting it for him. So single barrel doesn't always mean better. It just means it's a single barrel, and the blend is always going to be the blend. It's always going to be, that one specific flavor profile.
Yeah, I mean this idea of picking single barrels, it's not new, right? I mean, single barrels have been getting picked by various groups or restaurants for a long time, but it's by any stretch of the imagination has it ever been as big as it is right now. In 2013, you could have called Christian or myself up and said, "Hey, how many barrels of Elijah Craig 18 may I have?" And we would have said, "How much room do you have? And how much money do you have?" And it wouldn't have cost you that much. It's more dependent upon your room. I know, to talk about the other bourbons that people are interested in, I have a friend who had a restaurant. Their house whiskey was Van Winkle 10-year-old, and they were getting private barrels of that. And this was only 6 or 7 years ago. So to Christian's point, single barrel does not always mean better. If you go back to what I said about Tawny and Mike and Chris, 150 years of experience putting together the perfection that I think is Evan Williams, that is Elijah Craig small batch, that is Rittenhouse, that are all these great whiskeys. It's not something to just pass over. That said, the single barrels are, like each one is like a different is like a snowflake, right? Not one is the same. So keep trying them. So hopefully you have a little bit of that first Elijah Craig small batch left. Keep that in your left hand where it was. We're going to move on to the rye whiskey. So every one of the whiskeys that we're tasting tonight, except this rye whiskey, is our traditional bourbon mash bill. We call it Heaven Hill Regular, or HH Reg. Evan Williams started the first licensed distillery in 1783. That has not been continuously distilled since then. The Elijah Craig small batch is our HH Reg. That's a 78% corn, 12% malted barley, 10% rye mash bill. Our Elijah Craig rye is a rye whiskey, 51% rye, 35% corn, 14% malted barley. So all the same grains, but in wildly different proportions, right? The 94 proof bourbon small batch is 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 years old. The rye whiskey is in that 6 to 10-year-old range. They don't give us exact specifics on that. So go ahead and give that rye whiskey a nose. I saw a lot of questions pop up as I was talking. I'll read through as we're nosing. I like it, Matthew. Seth, it's what Parker's dad and Parker's dad Earl and his cousins Harry and Joe decided to do, and it's what we've been doing. It's a lot more cost effective to not have temperature controlled warehouses. It's a lot safer because you don't have to have electricity running through an entirely wood structure covered in tin that is holding, as I said, 50 to 60,000 55-gallon barrels of 125 proof alcohol. The rye nose is wonderful. And I will tell you, I'm very honest about my likes and dislikes within our portfolio. I did not like this rye whiskey when we first brought it out. I was actually not exactly happy that we were coming out with it. I didn't think we needed it. And over the course of almost 2 years that it's been out, man, it's delicious. The first night that I had a buddy over and we cracked a bottle of it. We pretty much went through the whole bottle making old fashions, about half the bottle making old fashions and the rest of it drinking it neat. But yeah, so when you're thinking about the grains that these whiskeys are made of that I'm talking about, think about the types of bread, right? Corn, cornbread is sweet. Everybody likes cornbread. Rye bread, really punchy, sort of an off-putting flavor profile. You really sort of have to have a developed palate to enjoy rye bread. Not really till you get into your maybe late teens, 20s, 30s, do you really start enjoying that flavor. And then wheat. We're not having any wheat in a flavor in a mash bill tonight, but wheat bread is really soft. You know, the joke that I like to make, being from Georgia, I eat a lot of BLTs. Wheat is really just a vehicle to get the bacon, lettuce, and tomato in my mouth. That's sort of how all of these work in a mash bill. So when you're nosing these whiskeys, think about the majority grains. You know, there's not a whole lot of spice. I actually get some fruit notes from our rye whiskey. When it comes to Rittenhouse, I get a lot of dried stone fruit. I get a lot of citrus in this Elijah Craig rye. Yes, same mash bill as both Rittenhouse and Pikesville. So, and I'll tell you, if you do a side-by-side tasting of those three, you'll have a wildly different experience with each of the three rye whiskeys. The same way that you would have a wildly different experience with a tasting of Evan Williams, Elijah Craig, Henry McKenna, Fighting Cock, Evan Williams, Bottled and Bond, etc. All the same mash bill. Floral, like orange blossoms, exactly, Lori.
Jack, could you go into how the same mash bill is widely different between, any three or any four or five that might have the same mash bill? I love bourbon, but still learning the intricacies like that.
Yeah, so yeah, and answering the question, the comment, Michael, that's one of the reasons that I don't like to give out a lot of tasting notes, because I don't want to influence what you're tasting. I could say cherry right now and you'll take a sip, and I would imagine cherry would probably come to you in a second. I do get some cherry from some of our whiskeys. But so I think that was Matthew that was asking that question. The answer to that question is pretty much what I've been talking about with our rick houses, with our quality control team, with our tasting team. That's how we're able to have so many different brands with so many different flavor profiles, with making the exact same whiskey 27 or 28 days out of the month, right? When you think about the HH Reg, that's the entire Evan Williams family, which is Black Label, Bottled and Bond, Single Barrel, 1783, the 12-year-old Red Label, the Master's Keep, I can never remember what it's called, that we sell at our visitors experience, and the 23-year-old that we send to Japan. It's the same as Fighting Cock. It's the same as Elijah Craig, both the small batch and the barrel proof and the toasted barrel. It's the same as Henry McKenna. It's the same as Virgin Bourbon. It's the same as looking at some of the other bottles that I have on my shelf. We don't make some of those anymore. It's the same as a lot of the Parker's Heritage bourbons. The rye whiskey, as someone said in the comments, the Pikesville, all of the ryes that we've done are the same. Yeah, select stock, but select stock can have different stuff going on in it, so I don't use that so much. But it also is part of the answer to that question of why don't we use temperature controlled warehouses, right? You're going to get a lot more, theoretically, more consistency or more of the same old stuff if you just have it in a heated warehouse. If you look at palletized warehouses, there's not a whole lot of differentiation going on. Ed Maker's Mark, for instance, what they're doing, they, until 10 years ago, all they had was one label, right? And they were trying to make every one of their barrels work to go into that one label. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Maker's Mark is a fantastic bourbon. But that was how they chose to do it. It's part of the reason why we do that triangular tasting panel as well, so that we're not having whiskeys that are too close to each other. I mean, I hear people that say that certain Heaven Hill whiskeys have, a peanut butter note to it or a young corn note to it. I don't get any of those. Maybe I don't drink enough of our whiskey. Lord help me if I don't drink enough of our whiskey. I don't know how you drink more. So I think it's really pretty cool what we're able to do. We have all of the whiskey is coming from the same location, but with all of those different warehouses that we have, 60 plus warehouses with over 1.9 million slots, it allows for some differentiation. And I would say the same thing is true for other folks that are similar to us in their house style, if you will, right? Jim Beam's house style is very, very similar to ours. Our mash bills are pretty close. We use their yeast strain. We're both working on the same type and same size still. They have two different distilleries. They do a couple of different bourbon mash bills as well. And they have a bunch of labels. I think their whiskeys have some similarities, but I think they have intricate differences too. So hopefully that answered your question. So rye whiskey for us, we started making rye whiskey at Heaven Hill in 1982. That's when we acquired the Pikesville brand. And then of course we acquired Rittenhouse about 7 years later. Two totally distinct styles of rye whiskey coming from both Maryland, where Pikesville hails from, and Rittenhouse, or Pennsylvania, where Rittenhouse hails from. They say that Pennsylvania rye is a spicier rye. They say, or Monongahela or Pennsylvania style is spicier. They say that Maryland style rye is grassier or softer. I don't really understand the grassy side of it. I mean, rye is a grass, but I don't eat a lot of grass, so I don't really know what that flavor profile means. When I have Pikesville, I definitely get the softer, but it's also 110 proof, so it knocks you in the mouth. If it doesn't knock you in the mouth while you're drinking it, it definitely reminds you the next morning that it knocked you in your mouth the night before, because it knocks you on your ass if you drink it too late in the evening. And then this Elijah Craig rye is really our first attempt at, quote unquote, Kentucky rye. Yes, they're all Kentucky ryes now, but we're trying to, again, it goes into Matthew's question, we're trying to achieve those heritage flavor profiles in the other two, whereas with the Elijah Craig rye, we're really allowed to go sort of ham and go on our own and create something wildly different. And that citrus floral blossom, whatever you want to call it, I think is that wildly different from the other two. We're sort of in the same general age area, right? With Rittenhouse being 4 years old and this getting up into the 9 and 10 year range, Pikesville being right there in the middle. Then you have the other variable is the proof of the two, right? 94 here, 100 with Rittenhouse, 110 with Pikesville. If you were to taste Pikesville and Rittenhouse and Elijah Craig rye, this won't taste like anything, because your palate was already starting off at 110 and you're done. What I would recommend is trying these up the ladder, but also up the ladder of proof, but also pouring them 5, 10, 20 minutes before you actually sit down to enjoy them and taste them, because you're not going to get the nose that I think these whiskeys, especially this Elijah Craig, offers if you just pour it in your glass and nose it and then give it away. What do you guys think of the rye? We like it? Totally different from a nose perspective from the bourbon, obviously, but that same weighty, viscous mouthfeel, I think, which is the hallmark of the Elijah Craig brand.
I'll tell you, I'm telling you, I because when it was first released, right, it was like Oregon and the Carolinas. It was only in like 4 states.
Yeah. And
I got a bottle from Oregon, and I was like disappointed. I was like, nah, I don't really dig it. And this is the first time I'm revisiting it, and I think like you, I I like it. I mean, especially for the price point and that I could get at pavilions. As to your allocated discussion
Yeah.
before. But I don't remember why I didn't like it. Why it just didn't. Maybe a bad mood, whatever. But I'm digging it.
Yeah.
Kind of like a record of your favorite band. Every time they come with a new album, you're like, yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
And in 6 months, you're like, this is the best record ever.
Yeah, I mean that's really well put, Christian. I mean, I think that's definitely how I was. And yeah, and I'm the culprit of learning from my own mistakes and then telling you about my mistakes that I've made. Like this one, and segue into the next one, Elijah Craig Toasted Barrel, was the same way. I was like, all right, cool, whatever. We're just following trends and doing this. And I didn't like them on my first run throughs. And then when I was like, a couple of weeks later, I was like, all right, mint. Yeah, Jane, for sure. I remember the first time we were tasting it and someone pulled out mint and we were all like, oh my God, there's mint. So good pull on that. And a couple of days later, going back to them both being like, I shouldn't be so strong on my hate of these. I should just pour it and let it sit, because I know that I do that. I'm in too big of a hurry. I'm like, it's like poking fun at Christian. He's always working, driving back on the 405, but that's our job, right? Our job isn't to be at home. Our job is to be out and about in, with groups like you all before COVID, and in bars and restaurants even now. And so it's like, all right, let me taste this before I go. And it's like, it never gives you enough time. So when I've gone back to it, and then when I've let them sit and open up and really let them show their what they have to offer, I've been very, very happily surprised. So let's go on to Toasted Barrel. I think that's right. Yep. How we doing? Anybody have any? Let me ask you. Yeah, Matthew. That's exactly right on both of these for me.
I was going to make the joke at the beginning that we should do the 18 first, so we get the most taste buds and it's the lowest proof and all of that. But I see how we're working up to it.
Yeah. I mean, and Bernie and I talk about that a lot, about doing that first, but the intensity of those barrel notes on it, it almost does allow it to stand up to it. We'll taste the Toasted Barrel, and then we'll take a, maybe if you guys want to throw into the chat while we're tasting the Toasted Barrel, if you want to do the barrel proof next, or if you want to go to the 18-year-old next, and then we'll be a democracy and take the majority.
And a tip on the Toasted Barrel, I've heard a lot of people say they love the Toasted Barrel, but they wish it was higher proof. So make sure you leave a little bit to mix with the barrel proof. And I hear that's the gem right there. You combine the barrel proof with the toasted, and it pumps it up.
So I was about to jump into my story of meeting Toasted Barrel. They ran out of the sample of the 94 proof samples. So they sent me a barrel proof sample of Toasted Barrel. And so the first time I tasted the actual bottling of Toasted Barrel, I was like, this is garbage. I want some of that barrel proof stuff. It's way better. And then again, I went back to it and said, I shouldn't be so harsh on it. And I had it. I was like, damn, this is good. And I tasted it next to the barrel proof Toasted Barrel. And then I did like the 94 proof better. I'm a much bigger fan of drinking stuff that's proofed down. I know there's a big push of barrel proof drinkers, and it has its place, but man, I can't drink too much of it. I mean, I drink it like half ounce at a time, and that's it on barrel proof stuff. But that's interesting. I'll have to try a mixture of that. Christian, have you ever done that, combining the toasted and the barrel proof?
No, I haven't done that actually. I'll have to give it a shot tonight since I got them right here in front of me.
Yeah, for sure. So the Toasted Barrel came out, and to I think it was Matthew's point, like I hadn't really been following the trends too closely on the toasted stuff. And I was pretty excited about it, just from, we talk a lot about what barrel char does. I'm gonna get the pole out of my way. We talk a lot about what char does and what toasting does and the difference. And char, all of our barrels are charred to a level 3, except our recent Parker's Heritage releases. And what that means is about 45 seconds, we light that oak container on fire. So imagine a marshmallow, your friend who likes to put the marshmallow directly into the fire and make that thing come out charred black. That is charring, right? Then you have your other friend who holds the marshmallow up above the top of the flame and does a nice rotisserie of it, and it comes out nice and toasted brown, right? That's toasting, right? So that's the same with these barrels. So with the Elijah Craig toasted barrel, what we're doing is actually a little bit different than what folks were doing when we released it. And I think there's a couple of other distilleries that do it similar to the way we do it now. So this whiskey is actually the traditional small batch that we started with. So we get 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12-year-old whiskey. We mingle it together. We have, the picture that I like to put in people's minds is, imagine like a big witch's cauldron with 150 to 300 barrels dumped in there. You have a big stir, you stir it up. You've got that small batch, right? And then it's at whatever proof that it's at, barrel strength. It's not watered down. We then put that full small batch back into individual barrels. But as opposed to what some other folks are doing, we're actually getting a second brand new oak container. We are toasting it. So just doing that light toast on the top or around the whole thing. And then we're just doing a flash char, because the US standards of identity say that to be bourbon, you must age in an oak container that has been charred. It doesn't say anything about one brand new oak container. It just says it must be aged in a brand new oak container that has been charred. So by doing that, we're allowed to continue to call this, use the words that we have, and just call it Elijah Craig Toasted Barrel Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. We don't have to say finished or anything like that, because it's still straight bourbon whiskey. And that's what sets us. It's sort of a nerdy sort of little call out, but it's one of the things that we love to do at Heaven Hill, is talk about what the words on the labels mean. So we then put it back in that second brand new oak container that has been both charred and toasted, and it sits for another about 2 to 3 months in that barrel. And it's getting those different flavor profiles, those toasted flavor profiles, and they're pretty intense. One of the things that they're finding in the research that they're doing at places like Independent Stave Company, which is the primary producer of oak barrels for all beverage alcohol around the world, both wine and whiskey and spirits, they're finding that actually less char imparts more flavor on the whiskey than more char, because you have much more of the flavor notes in the wood in the top layers. So you're activating those as opposed to completely destroying them, right? So it's a lot of fun. You have a lot of old school whiskey people that are like, no, level 3 char, that's what we're doing. So keep your eyes open to see what happens. I'm not giving anything away. I don't have any information. I actually know that the guy who discovered it is having a hard time selling all the old whiskey heads, that less char could actually be better. But anyhow, so the whiskey then sits in this second barrel for 2 to 3 months. We then put it back in that big witch's cauldron, add the water to it then to get it down to 94 proof, and then bottle it. So same age, same everything as the first whiskey we had, just that secondary aging in that second brand new toasted and charred and toasted barrel for about 2 to 3 months. So if you haven't tasted it, go ahead, because
How many times can that second barrel be used? And if the answer is one, then what happens with that barrel that was just used for 3 months?
So our second use barrels we either use to age mellow corn, because corn whiskey can only legally be aged in either a brand new oak container that has not been charred. And for everything that I just told you, that would be a waste of money for us. So corn whiskey oak container that has not been charred, or a used barrel. And corn whiskey actually doesn't have to be aged at all to be considered corn whiskey. And then the other use for those barrels is our tequila distillery, our friends at Sorales, who is a rum distillery in Puerto Rico that we've had a long-standing relationship with, where we get our rum from, so they might use it. I know the guys at Paul John Whiskey in India, I think in Goa, use primarily our barrels. Macallan loves our barrels. Goose Island loves our barrels. Used barrel sales for us pre-COVID was something like the number 2 line item on our balance sheet. So it's a pretty big. I mean, when you think about it, we're doing 1,500 barrels of whiskey a day. We're dumping 1,500 barrels of whiskey a day. So it's a pretty good secondary business for us.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
Increased demand for bourbon in India. There's increased demand for bourbon everywhere. So I haven't read any specifics about India, but I would imagine yes. Although they have a lot of their own spirits as well, and if you any annual list that you read of top spirits, whiskeys and rums in India are definitely up there at the top. What do you guys think of the toasted barrel? Good stuff, huh?
This is one of my favorites, Jack. And I know you probably don't remember because it was a year ago, but do you remember what we asked you about a dozen times about this exact thing last year when we tried it?
Nope.
We kept asking you, is it a one-time release or is it going to come back out again? And you gave us the secret heads up that we'll be able to find it again, because I think I've gone through about 3 of those since then, and I'm on the 4th. So yeah, huge fan. Love the toasted.
Well, you're gonna have to private message me and tell me where you find it, because this is the first bottle, and Christian only gave me this much of it today for this tasting. It's the first time I've had any.
The rest for myself, so sorry.
It's the first time
So
I've
just
had
to
it
give
in
everybody
6 or
on
7
this a
months.
heads up,
We got
it
you,
is
Jack.
expected here in California. We're supposed to get it the second week of February. Who knows if that's going to be true or not with the global shipping problems, but we will see it hopefully before March 1. So keep an eye out. It will be coming very, very soon.
Yeah, and PSA, be nice to anybody and everyone that you go out to and see in a restaurant, because they are dealing with these shipping issues worse than we are. I mean, it is because we're one company, and every company that makes anything right now is getting absolutely hammered. I'm still crossing my fingers and hoping I get to see a bottle of Tito's somewhere with a black top on it, because I heard that was happening, and I haven't seen that anywhere. But supply chain is absolutely ridiculous. We've got some of our top brands that we can't even get glass for. So we've got plenty of whiskey, but you can't get glass. It's insane. Yeah. So I saw everything when I first said it. I saw a bunch of 18s go up there. Should we try the 18 and then do the barrel proof last?
You want me to do a quick poll and then give you the results? Let me finish the one that I posted earlier. I'll do a quick poll so it's nice and efficient.
Hey, Vadim, before you do that, can we just, so many questions were going.
Okay.
Can we just kind of revisit it? Just do a quick question. If anybody has a question they typed that didn't get answered, just shout it out real quick so we can have all the right information.
Let's do both at the same time. So shout out your questions and vote in the poll.
Yeah.
Vote in the poll quickly. Which one you want to do next? I'm curious to see if it's going to be unanimous. But yeah, and I'm gonna Jack, we're gonna have you guess what you think was the group favorite of the first four. I wanted to separate
Oh.
that. I'm gonna do another poll at the very end for favorite overall, but I felt like the 18 and the barrel proof are gonna be in a class of their own. So
The favorite.
mhm.
So I'm going to tell you my thinking. My initial thought was the group's favorite was going to be the small batch, but because I said it's my favorite, I feel like people may go against that. So I think I'm going to say the rye.
Okay, cool. All right, so the votes are in. Does anybody have any questions for Jack or Christian before we go on? No, Melicorn hats. Ha! Everybody got plenty of swag. No complaining.
I did see that someone was named how do you say it? Craig Eliyahu, and I was like, that's almost Elijah Craig backwards. Well done.
All right. So the results are about 2-1, 18. So let's go to the 18 next, I guess.
Yeah.
And then for the first four, the group favorite actually 0 for rye. Wow. 50% voted for toasted, and then 41% voted for small batch.
I thought it was the first three. I didn't in the running for that. I should have stuck with it's like the SATs. Go with your first instinct. So the Elijah Craig 18, this is a brand that we started putting out in the early 90s. Once single barrels started becoming, I'm not going to say all the rage, but once single barrels started happening, of course, Blanton's being the first single barrel out there. The first small batches, of course, under that moniker came from Jim Beam. They were the small batch collection a few years after Elijah Craig 12 had already been on the market. But this Elijah Craig 18 is sort of like the creme de la creme of the Elijah Craig brand, right? As Christian and I both mentioned, our rick houses are 7 stories high, 3 barrels per. Where we're pulling Elijah Craig 18 single barrels from is generally speaking the bottom floor. And what's interesting about the bottom floors of our warehouses is that they are dirt, right? There's no wood, there's no concrete, they're dirt. You're open to Mother Nature. And what you've seen actually in some of our more recent releases that have been extra age single barrels at barrel proof, mainly the Heaven Hill 27-year-old, was a 27-year-old barrel proof single barrel hovering right around 93 or 94 proof. I wasn't lucky enough to get a bottle of that, so I can never look up for quick reference because I don't have one. But the reason that is, right, is because the water molecule is smaller than the alcohol molecule, and the dampness from the ground, actually that dampness seeps up into the barrels and actually pulls the strength of the whiskey down. So a lot of these Elijah Craig 18 barrels, even though it's bottled at 90 proof, they went in the barrel at 125. They didn't have too far to go to add water to get them to this bottling proof of 90 proof. So making sure I have the right one in my hand. Maybe if you have some of your single barrel left, if you can remember which glass it was, put that one in your left hand, your 18 in your right hand. And this was 8 years old, right, Christian? You can taste the difference between, or nose and taste the difference between 18 and 8. Never say never, Craig. I don't know, but I could see something like that happen. It's already a single. The hardest part about a single barrel is actually bottling a single barrel. So taking one step out of it, I would imagine, wouldn't be too difficult. I have no insight into that. Maybe if we did something like that, though, I'd have to imagine that it would be a distillery only release, though. The sweetness that I get from the nose of the younger single barrel is like confectioner's sugar now compared to what it was earlier. It was more like lollipop sugar. Damn, Michael coming hard with the all-time comments. If you want my honest opinion about Elijah Craig 18, I do think that with our change in distillery, I think that the flavor profile has changed a little bit on Elijah Craig 18. I don't love new Elijah Craig 18 as much as I liked old Elijah Craig 18. That said, it is a single barrel, and from batch to batch, it can change. The bottle that I poured out of also has, that much left in it, so it could be a little flat. But I appreciate your honesty. Yeah, and what Laurie says, and a handful of you have all said, I'm not an extra aged whiskey drinker. Remember the comment that I said when I go into a liquor store with $100 bill with an armful of bottles, not just one? The reason that you didn't see 15, 18, 23, 25, 27, 30-year-old bottles of bourbon on the shelves until 5 or 10 or 20 years ago, depending on the label that you're looking at, no one liked them. No one drank them. It was considered to be the stuff that was past due, right? The guys from Shinley tried to market extra aged whiskey for the first time in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and it was one of the things that killed the American whiskey industry. I don't have one in here, I don't think, but you guys are all familiar with the decanters, the ceramic decanters that all the distilleries put out in the late 60s and the early 70s. That was all to sell off old whiskey because no one wanted them. I mean, if you're lucky enough to chat with Jimmy Russell, he'll still tell you that anything 4 to 8 years old is the best stuff that you're going to get. There's a time and a place for whiskey like this. Don't get me wrong, it's good whiskey, but my preference is the Elijah Craig small batch each and every day. And when it comes to single barrels, I'm probably going to take the 8-year-old over the 18-year-old as well. Christian or Vadim, do you have the bottle of this 18? Do we have any particulars on it?
I have it in the garage. I can run and get it. But what exactly are you looking for? The front or the back? Because I have a pretty good picture of it.
On the back, it tells you when it was barreled, so you can pretty much figure out its production.
I have a bottled and I have a barrel number. I don't have a photo of the back of it. I can go grab it if we want it.
No, it's okay. Was it a new release, Christian?
Yeah, it bottled 2/10/21.
Oh, okay.
It's our current release.
Oh, okay, cool.
If you go into a store right now and grab
Cool.
it.
So what's interesting, I mean, it's my bottling, my barreled was August 16th, 1997. I was celebrating graduating from high school that week. So mine was distilled probably at Brown-Forman, maybe Jim Beam, because if you remember, our original distillery had just recently burnt down less than a year prior. So it'd be interesting to taste what I have side by side with what y'all have. So I saw a couple questions about the barrel proof. Let's jump back to the barrel proof and see what we think. Any questions on the 18 that I missed?
Everybody wants to know where they can buy a bottle. That's essentially the ongoing question in the chat.
Of
Well,
what,
no,
the 18 or the barrel proof?
I put that because Christian was like, if you go pick up an 18 in the store. So my sarcasm was, yeah, what store?
Well, whoever can get there the fastest.
Yeah, I was
Today,
kidding. I was
the
kidding.
bottle shop in Sierra Madre got 3 bottles today. So, and Wally's in Bella Hills, but they're gonna obviously overprice it because they overprice everything.
That's what I was gonna say. You may find it, but you're probably not walking out with anything else if you bring in $1,000 bill. Okay, so
By the way, I threw out I have an interesting poll if you will humor me. I know people have favorites when it comes to the barrel proof series. So before we dive into this one, there's a lot of people who are Elijah Craig fans. So this won't alter the tasting in any way, but as we go into the barrel proof, I want to throw this out just to get everybody's or just to gauge the room. Because I know there are some people that have favorites, whether it's A, B, or C. And some people swear by like this release at the end of the year is always better or be whatever. That's always fun. But as we do that, and as everyone votes on the polls, and as we're pouring our last dram of the night, that's part of the official tasting, I invite everyone to turn on their cameras, and before you down this last drink, raise a glass and say cheers to Jack and Christian for helping organize this. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Here's to you. Here's to Heaven Hill and Elijah Craig.
cheers to you
everyone.
guys. Cheers to you guys.
Raise your glass, smile. Perfect. One more time. I had something in the shot. One more time. Raise your glass and smile. Look at Amanda sighing at me. Fantastic. Sorry about that. Awesome. Got this
One thing I want to throw out there, to what Jack was saying, that these bars and restaurants are getting beat up. Go in and support your local bars and restaurants because they have these pours, and a lot of them have them at reasonable prices. They're not trying to get the maximum amount of dollar. Yeah, you're gonna see some high prices out there, but go somewhere else. And
Right.
if there's a 2-ounce pour that they pour, ask them for a 1-ounce pour. Cut that price in half and do another ounce of something else to compare it with. And that's the best way to go out and support your local bars right now and taste really cool product.
Here, here. Here, here. It's like an oak tree that produces maple syrup for me. Jake, is that in reference to 18 or barrel proof?
18.
Gotcha.
It's sweeter on the nose.
I'm gonna go back to it with that in my mind. I like the poetry.
This is yours, Robert.
So your poll threw me off, Vadim, because I forgot we're tasting the C9, and I was just tasting the A122, which my answer to the poll is A tends to be my favorite, which always seems to be other people's least favorite. So maybe I have a terrible nose and a terrible palate, or maybe I'm just really excited because it's like the first thing that I get in the mail in the new year.
Man, this barrel proof is fantastic. I think just about everyone voted. And wow. I'm not even going to torture you with this. Surprisingly enough, it's pretty damn close.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're at 10 votes for C, 10 votes for B, and 6 votes for A. So it's all across the board.
Wow.
Cool. It's not as polarizing as I would expect. Yeah, just like you said, I've heard rumors that like A is the worst and C is the best, but apparently that's not global. That's not universal.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, the funny thing is, when it won World Whiskey of the Year in 2017, it was actually the A result, the A bottling that had been judged first. They requested a second sample, and we didn't have one to give them, so we gave them the B. And the B is what was the B then also won the next round. And then the B is what was featured in all the media. And I guess what they do is they're doing those tastings throughout the year. And the C was one in its class as well that year too. So yeah, I saw someone post in the chat, nothing finishes like Elijah Craig barrel proof. I mean, this seems to be the constant, you know, when you read articles, top lists, you know, best things to get under $100 or whatever it is. Elijah Craig barrel proof seems to be omnipresent in each and every one of those lists, which is really exciting for us. I mean, it started, each of our barrel proof releases has a very similar origin story. It started from a private event and people went nuts for them. So in 2012, I believe it was, at the Kentucky Bourbon Affair, we allowed a group to come down and pick a barrel of Elijah Craig barrel proof. And then next fall, it was a bottling. And then the same thing with Larceny barrel proof. I believe it was June of 2018 for the Kentucky Bourbon Affair. We allowed a group to come in and they actually picked 2 barrels of Larceny barrel proof. I thought I still had a bottling of that. And then of course it became a regular product in January of 2020. And so 2017 Elijah Craig barrel proof was World Whiskey of the Year, and 2020 Larceny barrel proof was World Whiskey of the Year. So yeah, I mean, they're so fascinating because exactly like I said, right? Every barrel is like a snowflake, right? They're all different. They don't give us any of the barrel information, like a breakdown of how old they are. This bottling does have a 12-year-old age statement on it. So this did retain that. And they're still different, right? I mean, we've had, here's one right here. This is the hazmat release, 146.2. And then what's the one we're drinking here? 120.2. And everywhere in between. There even been a couple below 120 now. And I think that's the fascinating thing, is even if the barrel proof releases really give, you know, we talk about being open to what Mother Nature is providing us, right? You know, every one of our barrels goes into the rickhouse at 125. And when we have a 12-year-old product, or a 12-year-old age stated product, generally speaking, you're going to have the same, a similar makeup of barrel ages, right? And to be able to have barrel proofs that range over 20 to 25 different proof points is pretty amazing. You know, I generally think that these are some of the best releases throughout the year. Like I said, I don't drink a ton of barrel proof stuff, but I'll have a half ounce here and there every now and again. If you find yourself in the Baldwin Hills neighborhood, let me know. I've got a lot. I've got barrel proof just mounting up in my closet.
You're my neighbor. Sorry. I live
Be
in
careful what you wish for, Jack.
Hey, I
I
already
know.
offered him my bottle of toasted barrel I got today. So
It's a COVID den right now. Even the 3-year-old that came in a little while ago has COVID right now. So, but maybe in a couple of weeks for sure.
Half of these bourbon fiends will brave COVID for a taste of cask strength.
Yeah, there you go. But no, I mean, when the box arrives with my samples for the Elijah Craig barrel proofs, I know what's going to be in the box, and I'm pretty excited about it. I think the team is just doing a fantastic thing, and I think it takes, you know, that viscosity, that mouthfeel of the small batch, and really just takes it into the stratosphere, right? Because there's no water cutting it down, obviously, and you know, even though it's 120 proof or even the 146 proof or whatever it is, it's still very drinkable. And that's one of the things that Parker prided himself on, Denny after him, Connor now as well, and then the tasting team. The bottlings of these whiskeys at these exorbitant proofs are still very approachable and still very drinkable. You know, like I said about Pikesville, you know, you drink 3 or 4 drinks of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, you will feel it the next day, 100%. But as far as a drinking occasion goes, enjoying responsibly with Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, it's bonkers. I think it's, like I said, I think it's one of the best releases, each of the three, year in, year out. Any questions on that? The chat's been going nuts while I've been talking, and I haven't been paying attention to it. So if anybody has something, feel free to go off mute and holler at me.
Yeah, Lori mentioned too how it doesn't drink like a higher proof, and just wanted to share a quick story how I went to a restaurant, and Jack, I think I may have told you this story before, but whole time I think I'm drinking 94 proof, and when I got the bill, there was an inflated price because of the barrel proof, and I'm like, come on guys, why are you trying to, try to take advantage of me coming in? And I said, can I see that bottle? They pulled the bottle out, and it was barrel proof, and I was like blown away that I was actually drinking barrel proof like water. So I don't know if it's because it's so good or I'm an alcoholic or what, but it drinks very, very well.
It's a little bit of a column A, a little bit of column B, a lot of column C. Yeah, I've had that happen to me a lot, and it's one. I'd like to think it's one of the reasons that we put these neckers on them, because the bottles all do look so similar. I've definitely had that experience where I've had a new bartender or someone that wasn't aware of the brand pour me a Boulevardier at lunch with Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, and I've had to either sit there and have another and then call an Uber home, or sit there and have another and call an Uber home. that's the better alternative.
What was the mash bill on the rye? Did you mention that? Was it at 51%?
Yeah, 51 rye, 35% corn, 14% malted barley. I'll go ahead and if you guys don't know already, send it. All of our information is one of the reasons that I love. I mean, I'm already laid back in an open book as it is. HeavenHillDistillery.com. So that's, did I do that right? Yeah. That's our website. All the information that I talk about, all our mash bills inside of our distillery, everything's there. As I let off with, our big thing is keeping alive the history and heritage of American whiskey and being as transparent as we can. I'm an open book. Christian's an open book. Pretty much everyone is at Heaven Hill. To almost to a fault sometimes. So we want you guys to ask questions. We want you guys to know our mash bills. I've even heard the guys from Wilderness Trail in an interview talk about how they try to copy our mash bills because they know them and they can. I mean, those guys are like world-renowned scientists. They're like the experts on pH and yeast and anything and everything fermentation. So we used to say before they became a thing, like, nobody's going to steal our mash bills and go try to make our whiskey, but even though they do now, like it's not a worry for us. Exactly how I was talking about between my bottle of Elijah Craig 18 and y'all's samples of Elijah Craig 18, like two different distilleries, right? It's gonna be different. Danny Potter, when he was still our master distiller, shared with me a conversation that he was having with Fred Minnick, and Fred had asked him, this was, I think, back in like 2015 or 2016 when barrel entry proof was the hot topic, right? And he was like, but Danny, why do you guys use 125? Well, Parker decided that he was going to up to 125 from 107, which was his dad Earl's barrel entry proof, and that's what he liked. And he went on to continue. He goes, I look at distilling like a really fun math equation, all sorts of different variables. The only constant that I can control is keeping the distillery clean, running the whiskey the way I do every day, and then putting it in the barrel at 125. After that, everything's left up to Mother Nature. And I was like, I like it. That's great. So, we've seen through these whiskeys, I mean, we tasted 5 different whiskeys that all have the same mash bill. And I think each of you would agree, different whiskeys, different flavor profiles from each and every one. And it's that it's the same new make, it's the same distillate, but it's Mother Nature. And then our team, Tawny, Mike, and Chris, that have worked with what Mother Nature has given them in putting these batches together, and then really using their expertise to keep the consistency from batch to batch to batch. And all of those releases and all that information is all on heavenhilldistillery.com as well. You don't
So
need
I
to
want to
copy.
know, what batch 146 proof was that you were referring to,
It's like 2015, I think.
because the only hazmat that I know of on this list is from batch.
Oh,
six.
that's the one it is. It's
Batch
140
six.
point. It's 140.2.
Okay.
The zero
You
on
had,
mine.
you
was
had me
36.
worried there. Okay.
I was when I said that, I knew I was not right, but thank you for.
I was jealous, and I was going to ask for your address, but
No. And I'm trying to remember what release was that? 2014.
that's 20,
The C9.
2014. Yeah,
Yeah, C9
batch 6.
14. Yeah, that was before we identified him in that way. But yeah, so all of that information is on Heaven Hill Distillery, as well as the Larceny barrel proofs, as well as Parker's Heritage, as well as the Old Fitzgerald bottled and bonds with their age statements, etc.
So Jack, every barrel proof comes out with an A1 and then year, right? What is the
Right.
1, the 5, and the 9 stamp? Is that the month?
So we started doing that in 2016, I believe. So it's A, B, or C. A means the first release of the year. B means the second release of the year. C means the third release of the year. Then the next digit is either going to be a 1, or generally speaking, a 1, a 5, or a 9. So the 1 is January, the 5 is May, the 9 is September. And then the last 2 digits is the year. So this release right here, A122, and this is 60.4 ABV, so 120.8. So very similar in proof to the C921.
And as someone who has tasted the releases A, B, and C, how different are they? Are they pretty close, or are they noticeably different?
I didn't hear the beginning of it. Sorry.
I'm saying how different are A, B, and C? I'm sure they're all good, but are they, like, if you were to taste them side by side?
Of which release, which year? Just
Yeah,
generally speaking?
just let's say you for 21 you had A, B, and C. Is that a worthwhile tasting? Is that essentially?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think I'm not sure that we're thinking about it in, like, A has to taste like walnuts, B has to taste like chestnuts, and C has to taste like pecans. I almost went to a Snoop Dogg song there for a second, but I decided not to. It's been a minute since I've done one. I mean, I think what we're trying to do when you fall under the Elijah Craig brand, especially in the sense of the bourbons, is, you go back to talking about the small batch, right? You talk about those traditional bourbon flavor notes and flavor profiles. That's where we're trying to hit with all of those. So, it's an interesting question to ask Tawny and Mike the next time that I speak to them, which has been very difficult over the last year and a half, to say, hey, are we looking for a specific flavor profile for A, for B, for C? What is that? How does it align to small batch? I don't know the answer to that.
Question for you. In general, what's the batch size for each of the barrel proofs? And kind of as they increase with popularity, are those batch sizes increasing as well? And in addition to that, I think I've heard you guys are doing single barrel proof private picks now. Is that the case? Have you had them? And how's that going?
I'll let Christian answer the last part of that. The answer to that is yes. He does that. That's his on the daily. So I'll let him talk to that a little bit more. The first part of your question, sorry, say the first part of your question again.
Batch size for the barrel.
Oh, batch size. So they're generally the barrel proofs are generally like a batch, right? 150 to 300 to 300 barrels. Yeah. And then that's what we do for the season. For the small batch, that's what we're doing, but we're doing small batches of Elijah Craig small batch regularly, as opposed to the seasonal ones. We're doing one batch and then on to the next. I would say it's somewhere, Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably like I don't know, 1,500 bottles a time to California for a batch or something like that. I don't know. I haven't done the math. And then as far as the private barrels and the barrel proof, Christian, if you want to answer that.
Yeah, so the barrel proof single barrel picks, because of the shutdown and the global pandemic with everything slowing down, everything was pushed back. So everything that was due in the last 3 months is going to be coming up within between now and the next 3 months. So you're going to start seeing those barrel proof single barrel picks coming into the market. Total Wine, Costco, $7,000 downtown. Ralph's, believe it or not. What else? Thunderbolt in Echo Park, Scopa in Venice, and Everson Royce in Pasadena. Those are all going to be the places that probably get the first bottles because they were the ones that did the first pick.
Did you say Ralph's?
Yeah, believe it or not.
Wow. Is that for
You think
one
those are
one location?
barrel proof private picks?
Barrel proof private picks.
What age and same age as your regular barrel proofs?
8 to 10. So there's 8-year-old option, 9 and 10.
Wow. K&L?
Probably. I don't have optics on all the K&Ls and all that because that's a chain division that deals with all them. Same with Ralph's. I just happen to know about the Ralph's because I was talking to a friend that was talking to a buyer, and I'm like, really? Ralph's getting one? Cool.
How are they allocated? I mean, I don't know if this is a you question or a Rouse question, but like, how do we know which Rouse to call every day and pester?
It's honestly, it's just the luck of the draw. I always tell people to check obviously their Total Wines, their K&Ls, and not Kroger. What's the other one? Safeway, Pavilions. Pavilions is a really great location for even me. When I need something, I go there randomly and find something like, okay, yeah, I want this. Yeah, I want that. So I always start with the bigger names and then find out which bars are doing barrel picks and try to buy a bottle from them because now with the laws the way they are, you can buy to go. You can take out.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, I wonder if the barrel proof crushed everything else today. Let's see. Let's see what everybody's favorite of the night was. All around, you got to pick your favorite.
Hey, Jack, while we wait, I got to show you my buddy in Virginia has a 1973 bottle of Mellocorn.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And here's the tax strip on it, as you can see. $2.99, by the way, was the cost.
1969, 1970.
That was the barrel. That was barreling, and then 73 was the thing. It was
Holy
$2.99. Yeah, it's the earliest one I've seen.
Did he? Yeah, I had some 1980s Mellocorn this summer. I did a tasting with a group. Did he buy that at a ABC in Virginia? And
no, he got it off an auction or something like that.
Okay.
And he's on like the Mellocorn, right? I'm gonna put his Instagram handle on here. He's got a good stuff. So
yeah, those guys
the oldest one I've seen.
Those guys calmed down a little bit when we had our work stoppage. They were
yeah.
hot and heavy, and then Corn Daddy was probably the most outspoken person about our work stoppage, and he's gone.
They sent him a bunch of gear, like they sent him shirts and hats and all kinds of stuff for that.
Yeah.
Posting that pickup, but
yeah. Wow, that's nuts. Yeah, I grew up mostly in Virginia, and knowing what I know now about our regular business in the state of Virginia, I'm just like kicking myself that I wasn't buying more whiskey when I was in college. But I mean,
Yep.
if I had bought
grew
it when
I grew up in
college,
Maryland. Like I get it. That's the national set. So
it would have been consumed if I had bought it when I was in college.
correct.
It was consumed when I bought it in college. But see, I'm from Georgia, so I'm a Braves fan.
Fair enough. We'll be rivals.
There you go.
So
I know what
Millicorn
I'm talking about.
cast strength picks for everyone.
Hey, stranger things have happened. Stranger things have happened. I'm not promising anything, but stranger things have happened.
Sure.
Cool.
We all voted, and I'm gonna just share the results with you.
Hazmat coin.
It's pretty heavy. 21 for barrel proof, 6 for toasted, 2 for 18, and 2 for small batch. Hey, 18 did just as well as small batch. That's something in that lineup. So, but yeah, you wanted to do 18 after the barrel proof. Do you feel like we messed up your order?
Me?
Yeah.
No, that was the order that it was sent to me. So I always assume that everyone wants to do the 18 last. And I try not to put too much of an opinion out there, but I think we did it exactly the right way. I wouldn't want to I don't like drinking the 18 after the barrel. I don't like drinking anything after the barrel proof because as somebody said, palate's gone.
Mm-hmm. But that barrel proof was so soft for 60% alcohol. That was very enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm talking about when I said they're just so darn drinkable. And Todd, to answer your question, the barrels tell us what they're going to become. None of the barrels are stamped with a brand name on them. They're stamped with their mash bill, the contents inside. And it's through Tawny and Mike nosing and tasting that they find out what they're going to become. Larceny barrel proof, I'm not sure. I haven't seen an A22 release yet.
Yeah, the Larceny barrel proof, the next one we're getting is actually the last one from 21. So we haven't gotten our C921 yet here in California, and that's expected the later part of this month.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, a lot of like just the Total Wine out here this week, we've just been getting that the barrel proof C921. So everything's just a little bit behind with all the shipping issues.
This glass is the hardest thing for us to get right now. This bottle shape, and this whoever makes this bottle for us, we're back to like our glass maker and supplier from like 3 or 4 years ago because it's so hard to get. So,
oh,
COVID's fucking everything up for everybody.
I gotta say, Jack, I know I was a bit of a harsh critic on the Elijah Craig 18, but 60-40 mix of the Elijah Craig barrel proof and the Elijah Craig 18, that's a hitter right there. I think we need to do an Elijah Craig 18 barrel proof. Just saying.
Elijah Craig toasted barrel proof?
No, sorry. I've had, some alcohol.
Oh,
Elijah Craig 18 barrel proof.
Got it.
Yeah, but as Jack mentioned, it would probably be like 47 instead of 45.
Right.
Because it comes out so low anyway.
You just do a blend like I did. Perfect.
Yeah, we have this guy, Brian, in our group. He always complains about low proof. So we just add pure alcohol to his drams and it works out. So we can do that too.
Sounds good.
Ethanol.
Yeah, that's it. Just pure rubbing alcohol into his bottle. So he wants it at least 70% every time. So I oblige.
We do have a barrel proof.
You should listen to that guy more often. He sounds like he knows his stuff.
We have a barrel proof coming to California. It's going to be our inaugural first edition Heaven Hill Heritage Collection.
Ooh.
It's going to be a 17, 19, and 20-year-old blend.
That sounds awesome.
It's already hit the press, so this isn't any kind of like insider tip or secret. This is already public knowledge. But it's 118.2 for 118.2 proof. We will probably see that they're shipping out of Kentucky. I believe they said March, so that means we probably won't see it here till June with the way everything's going. Quite honestly.
And where are we going to find that? Where should we camp out for that now?
I don't even know at that point. At this point,
Right,
it's too
7-Eleven.
early to tell. Too early to tell.
Okay.
Have them a flash out.
Oh my God.
Oh, for the love of God, Jordan, please don't.
What else, guys?
What other Elijah Craig questions does the group have? We
I
have
mean, I'll ask something, but I'm pretty sure that Jack already answered it. So I know you said that the barrels tell you what they're going to be. So I'm assuming that means that when you guys are looking for like the A, B, and C releases of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, you aren't necessarily always going to the exact same place in the rick house every single time for it. You're letting them tell you then, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, it used to be a much more of a guessing game. And now, our CFO came from, Deloitte or somewhere 15 years ago. And there's a very advanced spreadsheet that can tell you at the drop of a hat, what contents are in what barrel and what location. And generally speaking, if we're pulling, HH reg from somewhere and it became Elijah Craig 18 or Henry McKenna single barrel, or was a barrel in a batch of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, we're more than likely probably going to put HH reg back in that slot. As far as Elijah Craig Barrel Proof remains to be seen. I mean, the product's only been out for trying to do some quick math, 8 or 9 years. So we're not yet at that point where we even have an example to be like, yeah, that works. So I'll let you know in 5 years.
Hey, Jack, if the mash bill is already determined and it's been determined for a long time and the distillation process is already, well established and the yeast is well established, what does the master distiller actually do?
He ensures the quality. I mean, he is at the end of the day, he or she is like the primary person in charge of quality control. Connor would make a very dry Irish joke, which I can't do. But, what he says his job is to ensure that he's putting out the best possible new make there is. And what he means by that is the cleanest and the best from an ingredient standpoint and quality standpoint from a mashing it, fermentation, getting the most out of the fermentation, which he's getting 200 more barrels a day out than he was when he started now. And someone asked him that at Whiskey Fest in New York. He goes, how the hell did you do that? He goes, I added more grain. But I mean, that's a very simple answer, but in reality, he really tweaked a lot of different stuff. The two folks that he brought over with him that have sort of been his right-hand crew since he was at Brown Forman and Angel's Envy. But yeah, I mean, it is sort of the myth of the master distiller, right? You have this picture of a Jimmy Rutledge or a Jimmy Russell or a Parker Beam or a Connor or whoever it is, walking, driving around on a buggy or something and, tasting the fermenter and then drilling into a barrel and tasting it. And at the end of the day, there's different people doing those different things. So Connor's in charge of the Bernheim distillery each and every day, making sure that he's ordering the right amount of grains, that the grains he's getting are of the highest quality, that the distillery is running at its absolute best capacity and its cleanest possible capacity, and then making sure that that new make whiskey coming off the still is the best that it can possibly be. And it's pretty funny. You hear him talk about ordering grain. He basically sends a text message to get millions of dollars of corn a day because the price of corn is changing every day as a commodity, right? So we don't have a long-term contract in place like, hey, we need X million bushels of corn, you know, from January 1st to June 1st. It changes on a daily basis. So it's pretty awesome to be able to be with him when he's doing those, sending those sorts of text messages. We'll be at lunch and he'll be texting next to me. He'll be like, look at that.
Well, that like kind of raises a question that came up in the chat earlier that I kind of want to raise again, which is what's the difference? I know I was reading up on you earlier, Jack, and it seems like you've been with the brand for a little bit of time now, and so you'd know the brand pretty well before this new master distiller. And I'm just curious, like, what does he do? What does he do really well, other than you mentioned production? But like, is there any expressions that he's really crushing?
Probably the biggest thing outside of making whiskey and really increasing our efficiencies is for the first time we are actually pulling barrels from our Bernheim warehouses. So across the street from our distillery are these huge, and you can see pictures of them at heavenhilldistillery.com. They're these huge 10 and 12 story brick buildings. I talked about the warehouses in Bardstown. Wood structures wrapped in tin, dirt floors. These brick buildings are, brick shit houses, right? I mean, they're not going anywhere. A tornado comes through downtown Louisville, knock on wood, that it doesn't, they're not going anywhere. And he was the first master distiller to say, hey, what does the whiskey taste like in here, as opposed to just signing off the purchase order for that whiskey to be shipped to Europe or Australia, where it historically has been going. And so we actually had a Heaven Hill Select release from 2 or 3 years ago that was barrel proof from the 10th floor of one of those. So not something that's continuous, that's necessarily a sustainable thing as far as those that specific whiskey is concerned, but he's now going back there much more often and checking them out. When you talk about a master distiller and like what have they done as far as the whiskey is concerned, until someone's there for 5, 10, 15 years, it's really hard to say. I mean, we're still, all the whiskey that's coming out of Heaven Hill is still primarily Parker Beam whiskey. It's probably Denny Potter, Evan Williams, maybe some Denny Potter larceny, but it's still Parker Beam, Elijah Craig, Parker Beam, McKenna, all that. So, believe me, I was texting with Denny this weekend. I'll text Denny to tell him if his whiskey tastes like shit. It won't, though. Few people time to go. I got to go in a second. Goose Island. I am like the biggest fan of Goose Island. I love stouts. I love everything they do. I love it all. They did 6 different releases in 2018, each one of our mash bills, from our barrels that had aged, our different mash bills, and I couldn't get enough of it. Whether it was the stout, the barley wine, whatever it was, so good. And I'm the type of person, like, there's bottles in those 2 canisters, and I won't touch them because I'm so nervous about I want to have them because someday they're going to be delicious and I'm going to want them, and then I'll drink them. The toasted is tough to find. Christian, correct me if I'm wrong. I would say it's probably the smallest of our releases, of our releases that are 3 times a year.
Yeah, currently 3 times a year. Like I said, the next time we're expecting it will be later this month. And this is the first time I've seen it in months, like maybe 7 months. So we were supposed to have it in already for this tasting. I actually had to go and borrow a few bottles from one of the restaurants that I knew that had it because I wanted to make sure that we included it with this tasting. So once it does come in, I'm gonna have to buy a couple bottles to give back to the restaurant that I got it from. Yeah, we're expecting it the 15th of February, but that doesn't mean anything. Every time they're expecting something, it takes an extra week or two at this point. So we should hopefully have it between Valentine's Day and the end of the month.
Yeah.
Hey, Jack, what's Denny Potter doing now?
He is the master distiller at Maker's Mark.
Oh,
Yeah. He was Dave Pickrell's assistant distiller when Dave was the master distiller at Maker's Mark. He was within the Beam realm for a long time. He left Makers and went down to St. Croix and was running the Crucian rum plant for about 5 years. And we pulled him, and he shakes his head when he says it. He's like, Heaven Hill pulled me back from St. Croix to run Heaven Hill. And it's like, he's from Bardstown. If you're from Bardstown, like the dream job would be to succeed Parker Beam as the master distiller at Heaven Hill. I mean, people growing up in Bardstown, a dream job is working on the bottom of the line at Heaven Hill. So he was there for 2013 to 2018, and Rob Samuels, when that position opened, made him an offer he couldn't refuse, and that had become his dream job after being the assistant under Dave Pickrell. So he left, and Connor became our master distiller. Denny left in October 1st of 2018, and Connor came February 1st of 2019. And the funny story about Connor is he's Irish, if you couldn't tell from his name, and he came over to the States to get a master's. And the way that he says it is his dream would have been to go back to Dublin to run the production for Guinness. And he got to Kentucky, met a girl, now his wife, and she was doing her residency in Louisville. And because of the fire at Heaven Hill, and Heaven Hill upping the production capabilities or necessities at the Early Times distillery, the Brown Forman's primary bourbon distillery at the time, they needed somebody to come in, and Connor got hired his first job in bourbon, the third shift at Early Times, running the production for Heaven Hill. And so he was there. He went over to Woodford with Lincoln Henderson to help him run that, then left to go to Angel's Envy, and was at Angel's Envy for about 2 or 3 years before he came over to Heaven Hill. Yeah.
Jack, Brian called you out for your
What is
picture
this?
not matching your current look.
Oh, which one? I just saw that. What is that?
I don't know.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
it's definitely not me. So that was there.
Is that like a stock photo they bought off somewhere?
Yeah, that's from
That was before the COVID mustache.
that was 2018. That was like 30 pounds ago too. I've lost 30 pounds since then, all in my face. I didn't even know that was there. I got to get them to change that.
All the pounds you lost, we all gained. So
I was going to say, I found your 30. That's for sure.
That's why he doesn't have his camera on. He doesn't fit in the frame.
No, I'm on the camera. I'm just so big you can't tell I'm wearing a black shirt with my name on it.
Awesome. Well, look, Jack, Christian, thank you so much. We really appreciate spending the evening. This has been absolutely fantastic. By no means am I kicking anybody off, but I'm going to hit the stop on the recording. We can all hang out and just chill and be off the record and just have a good time. So cheers to you. Cheers to everyone for being here, and have a good night, and I'll see you at the next one. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, guys.